In the moment he was betrayed, Jesus looked into the eyes of the one who handed him over and said, "Friend." Can you imagine that? There is a type of pain that has no easy name. It isn't the pain of an accident. It isn't the pain of a sudden loss. It's the pain of looking at someone you knew, someone who ate at your table, who knew your secrets, who smiled at you, and realizing that this person gave you away. This pain has an ancient name, betrayal. And it is so universal, so profoundly human, that it has crossed millennia and can still stop a person cold in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, bringing to the surface a memory, a name, a scene they swore they had long forgotten. You have been through this, or you are going through it now, or you will, because no one reaches the end of a life without having been let down by someone they trusted. The question was never whether it will happen. The question is what you do with it when it does. And before we dive deeper into this reflection, if this is your first time on this channel, subscribe and turn on the bell. It's a simple way to keep receiving words that find you at exactly the right moment. For many people, Holy Saturday carries a meaning that has been passed down in generations in a very specific form. It's the day of burning Judas, of building an effigy, stuffing it with straw, placing it in the street, and destroying it publicly, a kind of collective ritual of punishment, release, and symbolic condemnation. But here is a question that very few people stop to ask. Does any of that have anything to do with what Jesus actually taught? Because if there is one thing the gospel makes absolutely clear, in words, in actions, in every choice Jesus made up until the very last moment of his life, it is that he did not come to condemn. He said it himself, "I did not come to condemn the world, but to save it." So how is it possible that a day on the Christian calendar became synonymous with public judgment, mockery, and the symbolic destruction of a human being, even one who did something terrible? There is a profound contradiction there, and it's one worth looking at directly. Jesus knew what was coming. He had prayed until he sweat blood, such was the weight of his anguish. He had asked his disciples to keep watch with him, and they fell asleep. And then, in the middle of the night, Judas appeared, with soldiers, with torches, with the plan already set, a kiss as the signal of identification. And Jesus, standing in the middle of all of that, in the moment the betrayal he had long known was coming finally became real, said just one word to Judas: "Friend."
Not traitor, not "how could you," not a curse or a condemnation. One word that in the original Greek carries the sense of companion, of someone with whom you share a bond. Sit with the weight of that for a moment. In the darkest hour of his human life, Jesus did not lose the ability to see the humanity in the one who was destroying him. He did not turn Judas into a caricature of evil. He did not reduce him to the worst moment of his existence. He called him friend. This is not weakness. This is not naivety. This is the highest level of spiritual consciousness a human being can reach, the ability to see, even in the one who betrayed you, a spirit who went wrong, not a monster who deserves to be destroyed. It is far more comfortable to turn Judas into an absolute symbol of evil, because if he's evil incarnate, then what he did is completely beyond our reach. We would never do something like that. We are different. We are better. But the story doesn't allow us that comfort for long. Judas was not a demon in human form. He was a man with ambitions, with fears, with a distorted vision of what Jesus was supposed to be and do. He wanted a political Messiah, a liberator from Rome, a king with a sword. And when he realized that Jesus was something else entirely, something far greater, far harder to understand, he collapsed. He failed, gravely, irreversibly, with consequences that have echoed across centuries. But he was human. And here is the uncomfortable question worth sitting with. Have you ever deeply disappointed someone? Have you ever acted out of fear, out of ambition, out of a distorted view of reality, and hurt someone in the process? Have you ever been, in someone else's story, the Judas? I have. You probably have too. And if that's true, if all of us carry this capacity to fail the people we love, then the burning of Judas is not the destruction of some distant enemy. It is, in some way, the destruction of a part of ourselves we would rather not face. If this reflection is stirring something in you, if a name came to mind, if a situation surfaced, share this video with that person, or with someone you know is carrying a similar weight. Sometimes the word that sets someone free arrives through the hands of someone who cares. So we return to the question at the beginning. What do you do when someone betrays you? The teaching of Jesus is not naive. He does not say, pretend it didn't happen. He does not say, go back and trust them the same way as before. Forgiveness is not amnesia. Forgiveness is not the obligation to restore someone to the place they held before they hurt you. Forgiveness is an internal decision. It is the refusal to allow someone else's failure to keep poisoning your present. It is setting down the stone, not necessarily to embrace the one who threw it, but to stop carrying the weight of it. There is an enormous difference between reconciliation and forgiveness. You can forgive someone without resuming the relationship. You can release without exposing. You can genuinely wish someone well without having them in your life. These are your choices, legitimate ones, that depend entirely on your context and your own sense of safety. But resentment, that has no healthy version. It does not punish the one who wronged you. It consumes the one who carries it. There is a deep spiritual teaching that says when we direct thoughts of anger and bitterness towards someone, we are the first ones to feel the effect of that energy. The rope does not only bind the one it ties, it burns the hands of the one holding it. Letting go is not losing, it is freeing yourself. The gospel carries an instruction that very few people take seriously in practice. Resolve your conflicts while there is still time. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Not because it's easy, but because time is the one thing that once it passes, never comes back. Is there someone in your life you haven't spoken to in months, in years? Someone whose last interaction with you was an argument, a hurt, a misunderstanding that was never resolved? There's a specific wound that only appears after someone is gone, the wound of what was never said, of the call you never made, of the conversation you kept putting off because you assumed there would always be more time. Holy Saturday, in this sense, can be an invitation, not to pretend it didn't hurt, not to normalize what was wrong, but to ask honestly, is there something I can release today? Is there someone I can, even in silence, simply wish peace? This doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be a quiet prayer, a conscious thought. I release you, and I release myself. It can be, for those who feel ready, a simple message, a brief phone call. Sometimes what feels impossible begins with a small gesture we never imagined ourselves capable of making. And now we arrive at the hardest point of this entire message. It is far easier to talk about forgiveness than to practice it. It is far more comfortable to agree with this message than to allow it to change something concrete in your life today. Jesus had a precise word for that gap between what we say and what we actually live: hypocrisy. And he didn't use it to attack, he used it to awaken, to call people back to integrity, to consistency between what they believe and what they do. The true meaning of Holy Saturday is not found in the street, it is found inside you. It is not about destroying a straw effigy with the name of Judas. It is about identifying what within you still condemns, still guards, still hasn't let go, and consciously choosing a different path. Because the Christ who rose on Sunday did not rise carrying bitterness, he rose carrying peace. And the very first thing he said to the disciples, those who had fled, who had denied him, who had slept while he was in agony, was, "Peace be with you." No accusations, no judgment, peace. That is the model. It isn't easy, but it is the model. Today, on this Holy Saturday, you have a choice. You can spend the day burning Judas, whether the one in the street or the one who lives in your memory wearing the face of someone who let you down. Or you can do something far harder and far more powerful. You can choose to be for someone what Jesus was to Judas on that night in the garden. Not the heroic victim who forgives dramatically, not the saint performing for an audience, but the human being who in the middle of their own pain can still see the humanity in another, who can still say, even if only within themselves, "I see you. I understand that you too are imperfect, and I choose not to let your imperfection become the worst of me." That is liberation, not of the other person, of yourself. The love Jesus demonstrated was not sentimental, it was radical. It was the decision not to allow the worst of another person to become the worst of himself. May this Holy Saturday be for you the day something heavy is finally set down, the day an old wound finds at last a place to rest. And may the Resurrection Sunday that follows, in Easter and in life, find you a little lighter, a little freer, a little more whole. Leave a comment below. Is there someone in your life you feel you need to make peace with, even if only on the inside? Write it here. This is a safe space. If this message touched you, share it with someone who is carrying a weight they no longer need to carry. Subscribe to the Mensagens from the Soul channel and turn on the bell, because every week there is a word that arrives at exactly the right time.